So this format is not looking quite so bad looking at weekend one of regional data. So buckle up. We're going to discuss some of the things that I've seen so far. Make sure you guys smash the crap out of that subscribe button so you guys don't miss out on more awesome content. So I want to talk about regional breakdowns. We're going to have one go up tomorrow morning from the side deck so you can kind of see what's going on with that. I'm working on completing a couple of other ones so we at least have pie charts and stuff to kind of look at what's going on within the scope of the format here. And the first thing I want to say is while Ishizu tier is by far the biggest bully in the room right now, the way it looks, there's a lot of shifts happening. The loss of Mystic Mine actually, oddly enough, did some interesting things to the game. Now, a majority of what I'm seeing in terms of things, tier is still obviously being the highest represented deck, but Sword Soul and Scareclaw woke up. I've talked about Scareclaw a couple of times in a lot of these regional videos. Last format, it had a couple of tops, and then this one. And I think the thing that's most hilarious to me is every time I look at a tier list, Scareclaw gets tossed into tier 3 right now. And it's been one of those decks that still continues to kind of turn faces here. And I get it, all right? If you don't want to acknowledge the Scareclaw or, what the deck has done recently, that's fine. But I think it's very interesting. And for those of you that are like, oh, Robbie, I don't care about regional data. I mean, if you look at the top end of the format, it's just going to be Ishizu. Now, we get that, all right? But the mid-range, for regional level is going to be where more of your intermediate casual players are going to get the chance to play. So keeping them educated on that middle ground for what's going on over the course of more events is important. Now, on the topic of Sword Soul. Now, Sword Soul it definitely feels like it was in a time capsule for this format, because it's kind of woken back up and it's doing its thing. I was reading a report from a duelist that was talking about just the fact that every time that their opponent would do mass Shizu dumps, the Tenyi cards being milled was actually detrimentally threatening to the opponent. And I'm not gonna lie to you, if you told me that if you're playing against a Shizu tier and a bunch of Tenyi cards get milled from you, I'd probably take a step back and be like, really, the Tenyi cards they're going to pressure an opponent that has a mass dump? Yes, actually they are right now. And that's kind of interesting. And once we kind of present more of these lists when I get everything wrapped up here, like I said, this was just kind of like a mid update to everything that I've seen so far. So there's that. Now, on the topic of Hopium, aka Sky Striker did lock down a regional top this weekend. So many people in the comment section have just been like, nope, Sky Striker's bad. It's dead, Robbie. Let it go. Robbie, nope. Really, really weird out here. So interesting thing about this, Ishizu tier is kind of rolling itself back, where you're doing less of the large random RNG dump milling, and you're kind of rolling yourself back into, I would say, more of a contained explosion, per se, where you're going to use more of your catalytic effects to generate more advantage. And that's where a lot of these decks are kind of starting to find their niche. Because if tier hits the mid-roll, and they put up an okay board, and something like Sword Soul Strike or Scareclaw, for example, comes through and cleans it up, tier can recover, but if they can establish enough pressure back, they can actually tilt the scale of the game. It's only in the high RNG games that things can kind of get out of control and really tip away from you. And I mean, that's tier in a nutshell, am I right? The fact that the deck can have the most mediocre opening to the extreme craziness of setting up such a crazy field. Thank you, Instant Fusion. But we're starting to kind of see that mid-range aspect kind of take over right now, which is kind of nice. I'll give it to the format. It actually looks kind of good. Now, on the topic of Dark World, I've seen a lot of first place Dark World deck profiles out of locals. I'm going to say the same thing I said earlier. If you're looking on TCG Player and you're seeing these things at $9 and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to play the deck. Macro and Dynafire at 3. It's ruining the experience. Budget Dark World is very much an option. You gotta some of the builds I've seen, you gotta pick up a Chupacabra. Something else along the way. Johnny, Asian Persuasion, uploaded a profile recently. I'll cover it on the channel, but if you guys want to get ahead and see it earlier, hello? Like, it's functioning. I guess I should talk about the big elephant in the room. Di-Fi and Macrocosmo. Now, there was one exception to this rule this weekend, and it was a mutant deck. A mutant deck topped the South Dakota Regional with triple dimensional fissure in the main deck. And I was talking to the duelist, a friend of mine. A friend of mine was like, Robbie, the profile's nothing special. It's just, it's standard mutant with triple Di-Fi. He won every round that it mattered because of dimensional fissure. He's like, dimensional fissure, just call dimensional fissure the deck. And I was like, that's a good chuckle, but like, the mutant cards kind of have to hold the deck together. Like, in order to get this thing off of the ground, you're going to have some level of synergy here. So what has been told to me as the dimensional fissure experience was that crazy mutant list, and I will cover that later in the week when I finish the regional breakdown. I am nowhere near any level of being complete with the South Dakota Regional, but that was definitely one of the more interesting things. A friend of mine also played a stun with like triple macro, triple Di-Fi, and scrubbed out horribly. Kind of the general consensus I'm hearing is if you're playing like too much, like if you're focusing on macro, Di-Fi, and shifter, guess what? You're leading into dead draws and bricks. Could have saw that one coming a mile away, but it is nice that we can have such an extreme anti-meta deck exist in the confines of the format that a lot of people are just going to be kind of powered out and just like, wow, you know, like that actually happened. Yeah, it is kind of nice. So I also have not seen a very large amount of macro Di-Fi decks, and I'm sure as the day comes and more info from the weekend becomes available that will change, hopefully. Now on the topic of Flaunderies, from what limited knowledge I have so far, I haven't seen a single one of these. And that's interesting to me, actually. You know, Flounder was set up to be the annoying deck of the format. Oh my god, Flounder just got triple dimensional fissure, Robbie. You know, like, this deck is going to be crazy unstoppable. As of now, I haven't seen nothing on Flounder. Maybe it's just week one, maybe not, but that's something interesting to note. I am like 100% sure that's going to change, but that was something that kind of caught my attention. Lack of Flaunderies out here, kind of doing its thing, but once again, when you're kind of in the limited scope of things, there's also only so much you can do. I also saw out of Michigan that there was a Exosister list that did relatively well. I think it placed 8th. And of course, if you guys, I do have to reach out to the community here. If you guys know anything about any of, you know, the regionals, or, you know, if you saw Rogue do well, or if you're one of the players out here that maybe missed top cut, made top 16, top 32, with something interesting, always feel free to reach out to me. I can't make these style of breakdowns without, you know, the community's help, and it's amazing to me when we do put together these sorts of breakdowns, you know, what info and crazy things do come together, and just the overall knowledge of things like that as well. So if you have anything as well, feel free to shoot it to me. I like to at least complete the top 8, to at least showcase, you know, the event, you know, kind of show everybody, you know, this is what the metagame was for this event. This is what, you know, the best decks in the room were, and just kind of the overall representation in your metagame, just to kind of showcase how things are. So overall, here's where I'm sitting for the TLDR here for this format. Ishizu Tyr is still the best deck in the room. A lot of rogue decks have come back into the light. I assume it might just be week 1 syndrome where people have to figure out, but it's a Ishizu Tyr. I don't know what you have to figure out. Like, you take your deck from last format, bring it over to this one, you go, oops, I figured it out, you know, oh no, I had to cut Mystic Mine from my list. Like, what, dude? There's no reason for that level of craziness. And you know, macro Di-Fi doing their thing, it's been very interesting, to say the least. So please leave a comment down below, tell me what you guys think about the format and how things are kind of shaping up here, and I look forward just to kind of seeing the rest of how this format goes. Ugh.
Thank you so much for watching. Check out these other videos.